What's up guys, this is Abhishan, and in this video I'm gonna talk about the difference between BJT and FET, or BJT versus FET. So let's get started. Well, BJT stands for Bipolar Junction Transistor and FET stands for Field Effect Transistor, right? Now, so let us discuss the first difference between BJT and FET, which is really important one. That is, BJT is a current control device. To understand this, let us assume this is a BJT having three terminals, that is a base terminal, collector terminal and emitter terminal. And this is the base current and the IB, and this is the collector current IC. Well, IB is the input current and IC is the output current. Well, here IB is control current. So what do we mean that by saying that IB is a control current? Okay, now consider this is a relationship between input current and output current. That is, IC is equal to beta IB. IB is an input circuit parameter that controls IC output circuit parameter. So basically IB is the input current and IC is the output current, and IB controls IC. So like you can see that IC output current, that is IC, is dependent on input current, that is IB. Well, IB is control current and IC is controlled current. That means that IC is controlled by the current IB. So BJT is a control current device. It means that BJT is controlled by input current, okay, like output current, that is IC, is controlled by input current IB. So BJT is a current control device. Now let's talk about FET. FET is a voltage control device. To understand this, assume that this is an FET having three terminals, that is gate, drain and source, right? Well, VGS is the input voltage and ID is the output current. Now here you can see this VGS is equal to control voltage, okay? VGS is the voltage that controls the output parameter, right? So, well, here if you talk about this relationship, ID is equal to IDSS into 1 month VGS divided by VP whole square. So VGS is the input voltage and ID is the output current. So here you can see that VGS is an input circuit parameter that controls ID, which is output circuit parameter. So VGS is equal to control voltage and the ID is equal to controlled current. So it means that the output current ID is controlled by the input voltage VGS, that is the input voltage VGS, which control output current ID. So it means that that FET is a voltage control device, which means that the output current is dependent on the input voltage. That's why VGS is a controlled voltage, which is input voltage, and ID is the controlled current, which is output, okay? And ID is controlled by VGS. Unlike BJT, where in case of BJT, IB is the control current and IC is the controlled current. In other words, the output IC current is controlled by the input current IB. So that's the first difference between BJT and FET. That is, BJT is a current control device and FET is a voltage control device. In BJT, the output is dependent. The output is the current IC, which is dependent on the input current IB. And in FET, the output is the current ID, which is dependent on the input voltage VGS. So that's it, okay? Now let us talk about the second difference. That is, in bipolar junction transistor, in BJT, you know, bipolar refers to that current is due to both holes and electrons, okay? As we know that IC is equal to IC majority plus IC minority, which is ICO, and this is also called reverse saturation current, right? Well, in NPN transistor, IC majority is due to electrons, as you know, and IC minority is due to holes, okay? And in PNP transistors, IC majority is due to holes and IC minority is due to electrons, and you know, it's self-explanatory. And that's why, you know, the name is BJT, which means bipolar junction transistor, and this bipolar means that the current is due to electron and holes, right? While FET is a unipolar device, right, depending completely on either electrons in case of N channel or holes in case of P channel conduction. FET just depend on either in FET the current is either due to electrons or either due to holes. So it is a unipolar device, okay? Now let us discuss the third difference. That is, BJT has high sensitivity to changes in the applied signal, okay? That is, for the same change in the applied voltage, output current is greatly affected in BJT compared to FET. So it means that, to understand this, assume that by changing the in BJT, by changing the input current by a small amount can greatly affect the output current. Okay, in case of BJT, while in case of FET, the change in the input voltage don't really affect too much the output idea. Okay, so that is, in case that is for the same change in the applied voltage, output current is greatly affected in BJT compared to FET, which means that BJT is really sensitive to changes in the applied signal, right? But now number third one is FET has high input impedance. Okay, and ideally it is infinite. So what do we mean by this? And basically this is the most important characteristics. So basically high input impedance means that FETs draw very less input current. Ideally input current drawn is 0. In case of FET, the input impedance is so high that the current run is ideally 0. Okay, so that is, high input impedance means that FETs draws very less input current. So that's it, right? Now let's talk about the difference number 4. The difference number 4, that is BJTs are less temperature stable. So which means that the change in temperature really affects the characteristics or the properties of BJTs. And number 4, while FETs are more temperature stable, which means that the change in temperature can't really affect too much the properties of FET, right? Then we will talk about the difference number 5, that is BJTs offer greater voltage gain and FETs offer smaller voltage gain than BJTs. So basically this is self-explanatory, so I don't really need to explain this too much. Okay, so now let's talk about the sixth difference, that is BJTs are larger in size. So it means that BJTs take up more space and FETs are smaller in size, okay, than BJTs. FETs are practically useful in integrated circuit like IC chips, and more number of FETs can be accommodated on a small area. Okay, so that's why it is preferred to use FETs in IC chips. Okay, now let us talk about the difference number 7, that is BJTs are less popular and less widely used. Okay, and FETs are more popular and widely used in commercial circuits today than BJTs. Okay, this is self-explanatory, right? Now let us talk about the difference number 8, that is BJTs are cheaper to manufacture, and FETs, especially MOSFETs, are more expensive to manufacture, right? So now let us talk about the difference number 9, that is BJTs are used for low current application, right? And FETs are used for high power application. This is also self-explanatory, right? Now let us briefly talk about FET. So FETs has 3 types, right? Number 1 is MOSFET, which stands for metal oxide semiconductor field effect transistor, and number 2 is MESFET, which stands for metal semiconductor field effect transistor, and JFET, which stands for junction field effect transistor. So that was all about FETs and BJT. Thanks for watching.